Welcome to the Spaghetti Wall, the podcast where we explore mental health, happiness, and what it really means to live a full, healthy life.
We're your hosts. I'm Jason Wilcox, licensed clinical social worker.
And I'm Dr. Thaen Lee, licensed psychologist.
And every week we throw ideas at the wall of life and see what sticks. You'll hear stories, science, practical tools, and a whole lot of heart.
And maybe even a few laughs, because healing doesn't have to be so serious all the time.
So if you're trying to figure out life, you're not alone. This is a space for curiosity, compassion, and maybe even a little chaos.
This is the Spaghetti Wall.
Let's get into it.
So today we're going to talk about values-based decision-making, or using values to direct how we go in life. And tell us why that's important and what this means when people are doing it.
When I started learning about acceptance commitment therapy, they had one of these core principles called value-based direction. That once you are able to identify what your values are, you can live in alignment with them in the way you engage in the world and show up. I think the biggest issue that I've ran into in learning about it is lots of people, they can't differentiate the difference from, well, what are my values versus a goal or an objective. And what I say is a value is something that does not have an end goal or an end date or a check mark. You can't just check it off. It's something you're kind of like living in alignment with. An example would be like, for me, one of my values is having nonviolent communication. And that means when I'm speaking to someone, it's in a non-aggressive way. It doesn't come off as attacking or blaming. And so every day I'm working on that. It's not like, oh, okay, today I did that and I'm done. So
it's like a North Pole.
Yeah.
It's like a direction, a way to move through life. An example would be nonviolent communication. What happens if you move outside of your values? What if you do have violent communication?
Well, I wouldn't feel good. I think in moments where I might become reactive or emotionally reactive to something, I might speak in a way that's blaming or defensive. I might have a tone about me that's aggressive. And more than likely, because it's incongruent with my value of nonviolent communication, I'm going to start to feel not good about myself.
So then what do you do about it?
I think it takes a lot of time in learning and pausing and taking accountability. Like I said, lots of people don't know what their values are. Having a conversation with someone, or even sitting down and journaling or questioning, well, what are my values? What's guiding my life? What are the things that are important to me and how I operate and show up in the world?
Gotcha. So basically what you're saying is, first step, identify values.
Yeah, define it, name it, ask questions. Lots of people do go, I don't know if I have values. And I smile because it's like, you do. You're living your life now, which means you're living in alignment with some of your values. Maybe you haven't named them explicitly, but I would say family time is a value. I would say, doing a good job and putting effort in your work is a value. Caring about the environment is a value. All these things, communication is one, like we spoke about.
I think one helpful tip in doing what you're talking about is you can actually go online and look up values or a values list. And there's a lot of them out there. And what they do is they go through all the different types of values out there. And there's a lot. And if you do that, what you can do is you can go on and you can look at the list and just highlight or mark the ones that really resonate with you. And then start kind of identifying which ones are the key ones that are like driving forces for you that maybe you didn't give it a name to it before. And then this can kind of help give you more direction of are you living a life that's focused on your values, or are you living a life that's not? Are you out of alignment with it? I know sometimes I talk to individuals and they'll say things like, I just don't feel like I'm living the life I want, or I feel just not good about my life, about where I'm going, what I'm doing. I kind of wonder if values-based decision-making might have an impact in that role.
Absolutely. I think that And going back to the recommendations of how people can identify values, I think we can use any type of engagement in life and help someone identify what that value is. So, like, for example, us deciding to do this podcast, the value for me would be like educating, teaching, offering support and information. So that's a value, right? Took an action and we looked at what is the value in that action.
Yeah. I know we talked about this for a long time doing the podcast, and we're finally getting it off the ground. And in our conversations, we did talk a lot about what's the purpose, why do we want to do this, and the values. I share similar values. I want to uplift people. I want to give information out there that people can feel better in their life, feel better in their skin. I often tell clients, in fact, that if I could run the world, some of the stuff that we teach our clients around the topics that uplifted their life, I would love it if there was school curriculum that all kids have to go through to understand how their mind works, how emotion works, how mental health works, because it can make such an impact on their life from that point on. So many people don't understand those things. So that came into account of the value of wanting to help people become better, to enjoy life more, to feel more centered.
And again, we can find a lot of value in just this act of creating a podcast, right? So yours might be to help support and guide people. Mine might be to share information. So those are values. Let's go back to your question. You're asking how value-based decision making be helpful for people who feel out of alignment in their life or feeling like they're just not living the life they want.
How do they use this concept and these ideas, these thoughts we're having today?
Oh yeah, I think I can definitely relate to that. Like taking a personal example, as a young person, I wasn't really sure about learning about my family dynamics, and I actually didn't know that I was living and doing a lot of things for my parents. I didn't know that. And once I realized that something didn't feel right, and it wasn't until I went to therapy for like 3 years and I found out, whoa, I'm not living in alignment with my values of like self-determination, autonomy. And I was really being influenced by my parents and how was living my life. So for me, that was an aha moment in that, whoa, when I make these decisions or mainly based on pleasing my parents or, people pleasing, and it wasn't really about what do I care about? What do I want? Does it help me or is it just focus on, yeah, what my parents wanted? And a lot of time it was based on what my parents wanted.
Yeah. So that made a difference in your life when you kind of aligned it to your values.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Am now more intentional. I do pause and go like, is this for me or is this for other people? And is this in line with my values when it is for other people?
Yeah. You make me think of a time when I was much younger, just trying to get into the career field. I was newly married and had to support a family and life. I got a job as a car salesman. And it didn't take long for me to realize that job, no offense to it, right? Like the people that worked there were passionate about what they did. They loved to engage the people coming in to buy a car and work with them. And they had values around that they were aligned with, and you could see the passion in their work. For me, though, it just didn't align with my values. So it was so hard doing that job. I just could not connect with the work. My values are just so different. Not that one's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Just my values are so much more aligned with, I want to see people grow. I want to see a change in life. I want to see life better all the way around. Like everything I touch, I just want to see better. And so when I was doing car sales, it just felt so wrapped around money and sales. And I realized that's just not me. I can't do that work. So I talked to my manager.
Yeah.
We mutually agreed that it's best I leave. So I quit and moved on with life, and more moved my direction from then on, my career path and everything, to fit my values. And it's brought me way more joy and happiness in life.
Right. So, like, the first indicator might be a feeling of unhappiness or discontent or deflated. When do you start to question if you are living in congruent or, yeah, in alignment with your values?
This is really important because it makes a difference in your life, right? Are you being true to self? Do you know what your values are? Can you identify them? Can you look at how do you align your decisions? How do you align life? How do you use your North Pole of the values to go forward? Yeah,
I think it's important when thinking about these concepts to know that they're not fixed. They change.
definitely.
Some of them you might have more time and energy or resources to commit to, and some of them not. And yeah, it's ever changing. I think depending on your life stage and your age, some things might become more important or may take priorities, and some things might take a back seat. And so just know that they're not fixed.
Yeah, I think that's a really great point because, again, I can't help but think some of the things in my life. I remember at one point in my career, I used to be traveling every other week all around the nation, training people on leadership. And I was really loving it. I was really engaged. It was driving me. I valued the fact of travel, and I valued the fact of this professional type of work. And it aligned with my values at that time. Towards the end of all that, because I did that for about 6 years, and towards the end, I found myself, the passion wasn't there anymore. I just didn't have a drive. And I found it just not, yeah, I just was so disconnected from it by the end. And I realized my values had changed from when I started to when I stopped doing that. I realized my values were changing to, I really wanted to figure out how to spend more time with my kids and my family. I wanted to figure out how to not be on the road all the time, not traveling. I just saw life different. And when my values changed, I experienced life differently.
Yeah, that's a great example, Jason, because I would say that for those who are not needing to stop and go, am I unhappy in my life? For those who are just going about their life and feeling content, and more than likely they are living in alignment with their values. So they're not going, oh, what's going on in my life that's making me feel X, Y, and Z. Some people don't stop to think about this because they're already in flow, they're already in alignment with
Yeah,
their
which is
values.
great.
Yeah. I don't think it's about like, what is the thing you're doing? It's about, is the thing you're doing, showcasing how you want to show up in the world, right? And how you want to be in the world.
Yeah. I think about some of the things that get in the way of this, right? And there's a lot of things that can get in the way, but one that comes to mind, it's about how sometimes we can take the influence of others around us to feel like we have to show up in a way that doesn't align to our values. So then what happens is we get this social pressure and we think, oh my goodness, I have to be operating this certain way in life. So if it was happening to me, for example, if like that leadership thing, if all of a sudden I felt like I had to travel and I had to be this individual operating that way, because if I didn't, I would feel like people looked down on me, or people wouldn't respect me, or I would lose my status or something. So then I'm pushing myself to live a life that doesn't align with my values anymore. This happens when I talk to people. They get stuck in this mindset of, well, yeah, but then people will look at me this way, or people will say these things. And so they continue a life that's not aligned.
I think that is a great example to show how two people can be very different, right? So let's say you have employee A and employee B. Employee A seems really focused on like meeting sales quota, was a bank teller. And we had to sell things like home equity loans and open bank accounts, checking accounts, savings accounts, CD accounts. One teller, teller B is like, oh yeah, very driven, doing all the scripts and reminding clients, hey, would you like to apply for a credit card or a HELOC? Then you have teller A, who's like, not really, you don't see that same effort. And so two people in the same job shows behavior differently. So teller A might not be, that person who's needing external validation or who's needing the kudos or the, external reinforcement, where teller B they might be needing that and they respond to that really well. So you kind of see the difference in behavior. And you might say, well, teller B values external validation, where teller A doesn't.
Yeah, this now you're starting to go into how does it work if you're looking at someone else's values too, which is an interesting concept in and of itself of how do you recognize people's values and honor their values, or even use kind of a strength-based focus of how do you operate in the workplace to grow people's values, because if you align some of the work and the way you're engaging with them with their values, you're going to see them operate more effectively.
I even, like you just said, strength-based approach. And I now would even come to as far as saying as I try to stay neutral. So even like using the term strength-based, because someone's strength could be seen as someone's comparison or whatever, right? Good, bad, strength, weakness. And so for me, as someone coming back to the beginning of this segment where I say my value is to use nonviolent communication, knowing how people operate and how that this is a reflection of their values and not judging them on that is a big part of nonviolent communication, is a big part of who I am, not just as a therapist, but as a human. And so absolutely, it's important. So there's just a kind of example of like how when you go deeper into these things, you see how introspection, slowing down, really being aware and really thinking about how am I showing up in the world is really important.
You brought up an interesting concept in there that I have a feeling in a lot of these podcasts, we're probably going to talk about this. At least I know I'm going to talk about it, which is judgment. Most concepts we talk about, judgment is something that often gets in the way of applying them. And why this is so significant is recognizing what's happening in the brain when we judge. When we're judging somebody, we're putting a lens over them of what we feel like is right or wrong, good or bad, with how they're operating and what's happening. And so as soon as we do that, the brain is doing some self-protective mechanisms to put on somebody else. And when others judge us and we allow that to impact us, these things can now start eroding or stopping us from aligning ourselves with values. My whole point is it is something that can get in the way when you're trying to use values to direct life or align it. So it's just an awareness piece for people.
I agree with everything you're saying. That is also another possibility in the realms of possibilities.
Possibilities.
Yes.
I think some things hopefully you can take away from this as an audience is understanding where values can create reactions and emotion within self, whether you're aligned or not. I think another thing that I'd encourage audience to look at is just kind of identify your values, whether you sit down like Thaen talked about with a piece of paper and you just start from scratch, or you look online of what values are out there. And then start looking at your life of, are you living your life that's aligned with your values? And if you're not, what areas are you not? And what might you want to do about that? If anything, you don't have to change a thing in your life.
That's it for today's episode of The Spaghetti Wall. If something in this session hits home, you're not alone. These are the kinds of real conversations we all need more of.
Seriously, relationships are messy. Healing is messy. And life, yeah, it's definitely messy. But that's exactly where the growth happens.
If you found this episode helpful, share it with someone you care about. And don't forget to subscribe. New episodes drop every week with real stories, honest insight, and practical tools.
And if you want to learn more about the work we do or are looking for support in your own relationship, head over to avidcounseling.org. We'd love to connect.
Until next time, keep showing up.
And stay curious.
And remember, the mess is the method.